What's going on, listeners? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. First time listener, welcome. Hopefully, this episode gets you to stick around. And if you've listened to the show before, welcome back. I'm joined by Rob today. You know him from a lot of episodes. Rob, Justice League, all of WandaVision. Rob's been with me for a lot. And we're here today to talk about Mortal Kombat. So, Rob, welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be back. It's been a couple of weeks since I've had a chance to be on an episode, and I've been really looking forward to talking about it. I was definitely looking forward to this film when it came out, as I know you were.
Yeah, it's something that I was definitely anticipating. As a matter of fact, if any listeners follow me on Letterbox, this was actually one of my top 10 most anticipated films of the year. It ranked in at number 6. And little little disappointed with it for certain parts, but I did have a lot of hype going into it. But Rob, what were your what was your initial hype level for this movie when it was announced?
I was super excited about it because I have many, 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 many hours of my life spent on Mortal Kombat games, and was just loved the series. Definitely the games have had some ups and downs as well. I was a big fan of the first film. The second one, yeah, we don't really talk about that one, but I really enjoyed it. And thinking about the advances in special effects and thinking about the advances in film technology and filmmaking since that came out, and thinking about how important connected universes and intellectual property that can span multiple films and build film franchises. Thinking about how popular, I mean, what are we on, Fast 9 now? Who would have thought that was a thing? To the ability to see a film like this come out and be good and create sequels and create buzz was definitely something I couldn't wait for. And obviously the situation with COVID changed the world and made it very strange. And when we found out that pretty much all of Warner Brothers, actually all of Warner Brothers, was going to get released on HBO Max for this year, including this film. But I was ecstatic about it because this is probably something I wouldn't have been able to see in theaters while it was still there. So I was so pumped. And I actually have some thoughts about how the viewing might have been different on this, sitting on my couch as opposed to being there in the theater. But Matt, you saw this in the theater, am I right?
No, actually, I saw this. I did see this at home. I was going to go to the theater actually to see this, but just the schedule for the day. I ended up actually watching this with a group of people at the house, actually. So I did not get to see this in the theater, but I have some thoughts on that as well because I have actually been to the theater twice now since they've reopened. For listeners of this show, Rob and I live in New York State. We live in the Buffalo area where, for us, Rob, theaters have been closed for the better part of a year. They reopened for a little bit and quickly shut back down in the area where we live. But I've been to the theater twice, and I don't know if this would have changed my opinion a little bit because, boy, I got to tell you, being back in the theater felt fantastic. But this episode's not about that. It's about Mortal Kombat. So, like you said, there's a lot of time that I've spent in the arcade. Rob, I mean, people would still know what an arcade is, right?
It depends. Some of our listeners who are in their 20s won't have the same fondness for the arcades that you and I do, and anybody in their 30s, 40s, or 50s will certainly know what it was like going to the arcade. I can remember as a kid, if we're going to the mall, at some point I was going to be begging my parents to give me, $5, and I'd take it down to, we had this place called Aladdin's Castle in the mall I went to as a kid. I'd throw it in the token machine, and Mortal Kombat was certainly one of the ones that that I was looking for. Quick story, just about how important this film is in these games. I can remember I was in an airport in sixth grade on my way to Orlando with my family. For it was the first time we were going to Disney World, and the arcade there had just put in Mortal Kombat 2. This was the first time I had seen a cabinet from Mortal Kombat 2. And I couldn't believe it. Like, it was like, oh my God, of all places. So I'm pumping quarters into this thing. And, obviously I don't know who any of these new characters are. I don't know any of their moves, and I'm trying to just figure things out. I'm sticking with Scorpion because I know his stuff, and I'm sticking with Sub-Zero because I know how to do most of his stuff. And it was amazing. I couldn't, so then having to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get back to my friends once winter break was over to talk about how cool this was. Like, those are the things that, like, my kids will never understand. They'll be on Facebook Messenger immediately, like taking selfies, like, look at me, and click, and away it goes. But, to remember the arcade days where people would stack coins up on there and the winner would stay on, and then that person lost it, and the next person would come up, and just, there would be these guys that were legends. Like, you would see them in the arcade, be like, well, I'm going to wait till he's not there anymore because I'm not wasting my money. I'm just going to get my ass kicked. Like, you just knew there were certain guys that you just did not want to face, especially when they had their 1 or 2, mains that they would always use, that you're just like, well, he's got Molina. I'm done. Like, there's no point in me even bothering here.
Yeah, the arcade for me, like, anybody who's been to like a Dave and Buster's or something like that, for us, that's not an arcade. Granted, I love going to Dave and Buster's. I have
Sure.
a lot of fun. But yeah, an old school arcade when I was young, I went to the McKinley Mall, and we had the Boardwalk Boulevard arcade, which was pretty significantly large. It had 2 floors, but yeah, I remember Mortal Kombat was on the top level floor, the second floor of this arcade, and there would just be, like you said, I mean, kids would be in line with quarters lined up, and the first 3 or 4 kids would put their quarter on the machine, and then everybody else was standing in line. Like, nowadays, kids won't stand in line for 3 seconds to do anything. But I just remember, like, you'd sit there and wait to get your turn to play that game, because it was just, Mortal Kombat when it was first out was just everything, especially in the arcade. It was crazy. Such a great fond memory. And part of this movie takes me back because there's some really good fan service in it. But also some of it suffers from what I call the Amazing Spider-Man 2 syndrome, and we can get into that a little bit later. But
oh yeah,
Rob, let's start with, let's start talking about the movie, actually in depth. And for anybody that hasn't seen it, I think we've really kind of given our spoiler-free thoughts about part of the movie. So here's where spoilers are going to come into play. If you haven't seen the movie, you don't want to be spoiled, this is where you pause it, come back, and then listen to this part after you've seen the movie. But, Rob, right off the bat, one thing that just, I think you and I both agreed on is the inclusion of the studio character, Cole Young, who is the main protagonist, which did not work for me because this guy has he has no charisma. I don't remember seeing him in anything else, but just nothing about him stands out to me. He feels super forced. I think you could have still done this story without him in it, but it's one of those things where it's been verbally stated this was a mandated studio character that they wanted in this movie. So what are your thoughts on him specifically?
So as somebody who can remember playing the original game, the second game, the third game, spent, like I said, many hours, especially on the Ultimate Edition of the third game.
Oh God, the greatest.
Oh, well, so we're going to talk about that for a second. The third one, where you had the the team ups, and you could do, triple teams and things like that. Like that was many hours of my life as a college freshman was playing that game against just guys up and down up in my dorm that I lived in was, the triple teams and the double teams and things like that. So you think about, and maybe this is different for somebody who hasn't spent the time playing Mortal Kombat, doesn't have the emotional attachment, doesn't really have it as something that's been there throughout, their childhood into their adulthood. You've got this deep roster of characters, and they certainly get a lot of fan favorite characters included in this first film. You get this deep roster, and you go with somebody who's not from the games as your main character. And his character is, okay, so he's an MMA fighter who's a former champion and he has a family. Okay. That's it. That's the whole character.
Like he can get punched.
Yeah.
Don't forget that
to throw the uppercut. Yeah. He's supposed to throw the uppercut. Like it just, there was no reason for that. Like if you just, I think, Matt, to your point, if you had just cut him out completely and focused this film on Sonya, like, let's make her the main character.
Right.
Or had they decided that instead of Cole, that was actually going to be Johnny Cage, it's probably better. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of fan service throughout this film. At times, it's obvious fan service that it's only there for the sake of fan service and it doesn't really work. At other times, it actually really does for me, and we'll get to it here and there. But the choice of somebody off the board, I don't want to say that you could not have made that work. It's definitely a choice that the fans are going to go, why did you do that? Like, you could have picked anybody. You could have picked any of these, 75 characters they've had over the years, and you go in with somebody that we've never heard of before, and you don't even bother to make him compelling. Really, I think for a lot of people, if you, when they talk about this movie, they probably don't even remember that his name is Cole Young. Like, yeah. Without having Wikipedia in front of me, I'm not even sure I would have remembered that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thought he was, again, like you said, you have this just robust roster of characters from the games that you could have plucked anybody, even maybe somebody that isn't extremely, popular in the upper echelon of the characters. You could have taken somebody like Stryker, even maybe made him one of the main protagonists of this movie. But to sit there and have, for some reason, the studio mandate that this character has to be included, and maybe they're trying for that element where, we want to have some of this where the audience can attach this character because he's got a family and he's trying to defend his wife and daughter, which doesn't really, it doesn't do anything for me in this movie. So if that's what they were trying to go for, it certainly didn't work. And we can get to him a little bit more. But one thing that does work, I think, in any scene that they're in, and this movie opens with it, I don't think you can ever go wrong with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And the opening scene I really liked. It's definitely brutal. It sets the stage for what we're going to see in this movie. They don't shy away from it. I will say that I'm disappointed that we do not get a return until the end of the movie, which later on, that was awesome. Total adrenaline rush. But the opening scene certainly sets the stage for what we're supposed to see in this movie and the violence. And I thought that was really well done. There's definitely some really great shots in this movie. The opening where Scorpion's clan lives being one of them. I think the scenery is amazing. I do think the cinematography, the camera work, the violence is very well done. Rob, your thoughts on how this movie opens?
For me, there's parts of this opening scene I feel drag a lot, though. Like, it's kind of like, okay, we see what's going on here, like, get on with it already. And, I think, as I said, I think there's times where the fan service is there for the sake of fan service. Like, literally, I'm picturing, for like 18 different times of this movie, just a bunch of people sitting on their couches pointing at the TV like Leo from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like, hey, that's it. That's the thing. Like if their wives or girlfriends are sitting next to them who have obviously most likely never played Mortal Kombat, I don't want to assume, but I'm going to say most people who's watching this, their wives and girlfriends have not played a lot of Mortal Kombat. They're like tapping her on the arm saying, that's the thing, like when she's poking the ground with the gardening tool that eventually becomes the spear, like, right. that's the spear thing. That's going to turn into the spear. Like it kind of feels a little like fan service. And right at the beginning, we kill off the kid, and I hate movies that do that. Like just right at the beginning, like I think it could just be because I am a dad. Like that stuff just pulls me out of the movie. But the opening scene does really drag out at times. The opening fight is very brutal at times. I gotta say though, like I'm not a huge fan of the overall choreography, and the cinematography I think could have been a little better in this opening scene. It's hard to tell really what's going on in this at times, and I think they focus on the wrong elements. When they're playing with the rope dart, like that's a very compelling weapon we don't see used a lot. It's very common in Chinese style martial arts, but it's not. You don't see that particular weapon used a lot in American cinema, and I think there was a lot more they could have done with it. It was not my favorite fight of this film. Certainly the brutality of it to start it was really cool. And I think that what this shows you is just another example of what a miss it is to focus on, this made up character Cole Young, when so much of Mortal Kombat is about the rivalry between Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Like if you had based your movie on that, like that's a much better movie. That's a much more compelling movie.
Yeah, I think again, there's some changes that definitely could have been made. One of them we're talking about these characters, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and there's a lot of mainstays in this movie. One of the things that this movie does, and again, we can talk about these characters, but some of the casting, what it did was it made me appreciate the very first Mortal Kombat movie more, because the actors that were picked for their roles, I feel, fill those shoes much better than some of the actors that are in this movie. One of them that is the exception to that rule, though, is Kano. He is played by Josh Lawson, and this guy, whoever wrote the dialogue for Kano, bravo, because this guy is freaking hysterical. Anytime he talks, he's amazing. I literally did not expect to laugh in a Mortal Kombat movie. I loved him. I thought he was such a great addition, and how they had Kano portrayed in this movie compared to how we've seen him in Mortal Kombat. Now, he lines up with the Kano that we know, but his initial introduction and his initial interactions, I thought were great. He's one cast member that I said, yeah, the movie nails it compared to 1995.
Loved Kano. I'm going to, absolutely co-sign everything that you've said. Certainly, I'm going to assume a lot of listeners have seen the memes that are going around, basically talking about how Kano's back must be sore from carrying this whole movie on his shoulders. There's not a lot here. Like, this is not a movie I'm going to rewatch 18 times. The reasons I would rewatch this movie are mostly for the Kano scenes. What I really hope for is that we eventually get either an extended cut or a DVD that's got a bunch of deleted scenes, or a gag reel, or just any number of those DVD Blu-ray extras where they just have him do a line-a-rama where he just tries one line after another for the same scene, and then eventually they choose the line they want. Like, I just want that. Like, give me that. I won't necessarily rewatch this movie ever again, but I would watch one of those of just Josh Lawson just trying like 4 or 5 different lines for each situation and just dying laughing, because I was not expecting to really dig it, but it continues throughout, and there's really not a joke that just completely falls flat, and it feels in character, and it's laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, it definitely is everything, and that's hard to do in a movie like this. It's hard to do in any movie where everything feels genuine and it doesn't feel out of place that this character would be cracking jokes right now. But with Kano and the way that they cast him and the dialogue that they write for him, it works. It works really well, and I loved it. So he's an A+ in my book. But Rob, you brought something up where you said, I'm not going to sit here and rewatch this 18 times. I don't know if that's a joke to my love of the Snyder Cut and how many times I've watched that. But to me, it perfectly sums up, though, this movie as a whole to me is a YouTube clip where I would really never rewatch this movie. Now, granted, if somebody was like, hey, we're watching Mortal Kombat and I was hanging out with friends, I'm not going to be like, well, I'm going to leave. I'll see you guys later. I don't like what you're doing. But I'm certainly not going to throw it on myself. I probably even, if for some reason it was, one of those movies that you walk by the TV and it's on, I don't know that I would stop and sit down to watch this movie. What I would do, though, is I would target YouTube to watch some clips of this movie. And that's my biggest issue, is this is a YouTube movie where it's good in parts, but it can't carry the weight of its whole.
You could probably get all the best parts of this movie condensed into about 30 minutes and watch it all on YouTube. And it's going to be basically every scene Kano's in, probably every scene Cabal's in. I actually, probably the fatalities, because they're kind of cool. The final fight is I actually like that last scene. And I'm going to throw some love to the actress that plays Sonya Blade, Jessica McNamee. I actually find her really good in this. I actually thought she was another bright spot. There's some really bad acting, but there's actually some pretty good acting too. And it's not just Josh Lawson as Kano. I actually think that Jessica McNamee, I found her really good. Actually, I don't recognize her from anything else, but she looks the part of Sonya, and I really liked what she did.
Yeah, I like her too. I think she is good. Part of my issue, though, is, and it's nothing to do with her, it's the way her character is written. She's basically almost the narrator. And it's probably going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, because I do like the fact that there's so much lore in this movie about what Mortal Kombat is. You certainly see news clippings, and she's been investigating that there's this tournament, and if they win 10, then they can invade Earth. I really did like how this movie was set, more so than, like with the 1995 film, which I like a lot. I went back and rewatched after, watching this. Again, it went really kind of with a campy vibe, so to speak. It was good. I liked it, but I like how this movie is kind of grounded, so to speak, even though we're dealing with characters who can come back from hell and can create, ice swords with their hands and their powers and whatnot. But I did like how they tried to explain that this is a universe, there's other worlds. I did like that. I didn't like that for the most part. Originally, she was regulated to basically being our narrator of, well, hey, this is what's going on.
There's that whole scene where she kind of like lays out the plot of the film, and just kind of goes into the back, and it's just kind of like the whole thing is just sort of thrown out there, and it's very much a vibe of, okay, audience, this is for your benefit, not necessarily the character of Cole. Just go with it. Don't ask a lot of questions. We're basically just giving the briefest of reasons why we're going to have a bunch of fight scenes in this movie and people are going to get cut in half. You cool? Cool. All right, we're doing this now. And I actually think that this movie at times, I think, has an identity crisis because it doesn't know if it's supposed to be a bad movie that's actually a lot of fun, or if it's actually trying to be a good movie. And it reminds me a lot of Batman v Superman in that it's really not a good movie, but it thinks it is. There's parts of this that should definitely lean into the goofiness. Just go for it. Go right for the campy, just goofy, off the wall, just the zaniness. Like a person gets cut in half with a table saw style, hat with a razor blade on it. Like that's a thing that happens. So like trying to play it off as serious too, almost at times doesn't work. Like I just kind of wish they would have just really leaned hard on just the off the wall weirdness. And I think it would have been a better movie, because towards the end of this film, once the fights really start happening, it does lean into that camp, and it works better than the first half of the movie where it tries to pretend to be serious, at least in my eye.
Yeah, no, I think it does start to lend itself to being a better movie. Again, we talked about fan service. One of the fan service things is, and I remember seeing people just rage. I love that they reference when Kano is getting the sweep and they're just constantly taking him down. He's like, is that the only move that you know? That was like, Rob, I don't know if you ever saw anybody in the arcade actually like freak out about that, but I remember witnessing a guy just raging because someone was spamming the sweep kick. I love that they brought that up. Like from a personal experience level, like that made me chuckle.
Absolutely. I immediately thought of that when I saw it. Just, the stupid leg sweep that just knocks you on your backside. And it's, there's really only one way to avoid it, or there's a couple. You could walk backwards, or you could sort of duck and block or jump over it. But it is like the cheapest of cheap moves. Everybody knows what it is if you play the game. Everybody hates it. Everybody knows somebody that just did it over and over again. And to see them kind of go a little meta was a lot of fun for me. And then it's immediately followed by one of Kano's best lines. And I'm going to paraphrase because this is a family show. And he says, "Put a shirt on, Magic Mike." Oh, my God. I'm dying. Like just thinking about it now. It was so perfect. It definitely was a great fan service moment.
Yeah, definitely. There's one other one, and it's going back because when we are first introduced to Cole and we watch him we watch him lose the fight and everything like that. Can
we talk about how that's not an actual submission, by the way?
Oh yeah.
He just kind of pulls on his head. Like you couldn't have just sort of like ducked the back of your neck under his arm. Like that's not a real submission, but I digress.
He has no will to fight once it's tough. That's part of his character arc.
My son is 8 and he knows how to escape that.
Yeah. I really have a lot of disdain for the character, not the guy, because again, we've talked about this kind of thing on the show. I don't care about the actor, anything like that. The character that is written for this guy, I just cannot stand. I cannot get behind him. But because of this and his lineage to Scorpion, we get introduced to Sub-Zero, which I thought his scene where he just walks down the street and creates the ice shower. And by the way, absolutely, there's only like one person, if you really watch that scene, he obliterates this random guy with an ice ball. Like just basic, like if the guy is not dead, he's in a coma for a decade. Like he just gets obliterated with this ice ball, but he pursues Cole. This is when he meets Jax, who really looks like Steve Harvey in the one promotional. Like if you that's another meme that happened with this movie is the actor that plays Jax. His name is Makad Brooks, if I pronounced his first name right. There's a meme where he looks exactly like Steve Harvey, but he pursues Cole, introduces himself, and says that he's marked because of the Mortal Kombat birthmark. But we get a fight scene between Jax and Sub-Zero where in the background, Sub-Zero's finisher is written on the wall, which is you can blink and you can miss it, which I thought was kind of cool. Like, why would you have that there? But again, just a little wink to the audience that I think works. But the end of this fight, I like Sub-Zero a lot. I think his and Scorpion's costumes in this movie are great, but this is how Jax is eventually going to get his arms, which I cannot stand that scene where he gets his adult arms and not his baby boy arms that look ridiculous. I can't even begin to stand that scene. But you get a pretty good interaction between Jax and Sub-Zero, and you see the extent of Sub-Zero's, powers. And I thought that was really cool. I liked watching him manipulate water and creating ice and everything like that. I thought that was really well done, even though it introduces us to why Jax is going to have his metal arms, which I think is ridiculous in this movie.
Yeah, when you see him kind of start to have his arms frozen, that's another one of those fan service moments. Like, this is how he loses them. This is how he ends up with the metal ones. And then later on, he ends up with what can only be described as inspired by, Deadpool's baby legs. Like that's the first thing I thought of. And now that I've said that, you'll never be able to rewatch this movie and not think of Deadpool's baby legs when you see his stupid baby arms that look just ridiculous. I got to say,
how do you even film that? Like, how do you even film that scene
with a straight face?
Right, when he's punching that punching bag with those baby, I'm going to refer to him as baby arms. Like, how do you film that? Like, I don't even understand how you can film that scene, let alone film it, watch it, and say, yes, that's staying in the movie, because it looks ridiculous.
It's one of those things. Like I said, this is not a good movie that doesn't know that it's not a good movie. Like, those are the kinds of decisions that happen when you're a bad movie that doesn't understand what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to do it. There's, from a special effects standpoint, there is some phenomenal disaster makeup. There is some phenomenal, cuts and bruises and gashes and the things that they do from a practical effects standpoint with makeup that are tremendous in this film. And then there is some CG that is outright inexcusable in 2021 from a major studio, like just inexcusable.
Is Goro?
Yeah. At times, Goro reminded me of how bad, if you remember the second, the Mummy movie with the Scorpion King, where The Rock comes out as the Scorpion King at the end of the movie and looks like he's made of plastic. Like, that's the first thing I thought of. Like, oh my God, how is this happening? Like, how does a major studio release this? How does this get greenlit? It's terrible. And it's just one example, but there's plenty of other times where the CG just looks absolutely grad school level.
Yeah, Goro looked like a PlayStation 3 cutscene. Like, I don't understand. And going back again, Goro in 1995, again, my personal opinion, looks better than this movie in 2021, 2020, when this movie was filmed. I just don't understand how in 1995 that Goro looks infinitely better than this one.
It makes no sense at all. Now, I will say that it's right around this time when Goro shows up. It's right around this time that I think the film actually does start to get a little better for me, and that's because this is when it starts to get kind of goofy. We start getting the gory, over the top fatalities. The way that he gets taken out, it's very brutal. It's super violent, and it actually works really well, even though
it does.
The CG up to that point was terrible. But we start getting more of that. It's right around this time. It's it's a bunch of scenes cut together. That's when we get kind of the table saw hat, razor blade fatality that actually is kind of cool. But there's, this is really what the movie should have tried to have been the whole time. It shouldn't have been trying to, as pretend that it and take itself too seriously. It should have just leaned into this.
Yeah. So can we talk about too? Because where this movie starts to get good, it's right after Shang Tsung and his warriors invade the temple. And I have to tell you that when I was watching this, with probably, I think it was anywhere from like 7 to 9 people that we were watching this movie together, and it was a mixture. Couple guys, couple girls, a couple different age groups here. And we had to pause the movie because during this confrontation, we had a line from Cabal which cracked us all up, where we were just dying laughing and we had to pause the movie because we weren't paying attention. But I don't know if they intended it or if this guy just kind of ad-libbed. But Rob, the way that he sits there and he goes, ha, he's about to get his soul sucked. Like, I don't know why, but it caught all of us like completely off guard. And I remember we all were dying laughing and we paused the movie because we were just like, we just kept looking at each other going, it shouldn't, like, I don't think he needed to say it like that, but it just, for whatever reason, it just caught us.
Yeah, you got to imagine, especially because, the line wasn't being said live. That was pre-recorded. Like, he had a bunch of different ways they could have done that. And they could have sat down and watched it in editing and had the actor just go back into any studio anywhere. Literally, he could have just recorded it into his phone and done a different version that probably would have made a little more sense. But I will say, referencing the soul sucking, it's a fan service for sure. But holy cow, is it really well done? I mean, it is.
Yeah.
If you go back to the second, Mortal Kombat game and you remember what that finishing move looked like for Shang Tsung, it's super accurate and it really works well. And like I said, it's right around this time when the movie just lets its freak flag fly that it starts to actually work.
Yeah, you get the dragon fatality from Liu Kang, which again looks when this movie is Mortal Kombat, it works. When this movie is Cole Young, it absolutely does not work, and because Cole Young is the main character of this movie, more of this movie doesn't work than does work, which is a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great parts, through this though. And like I said, some of the fan service I think is really great. Some of it is not. Did we really need Kung Lao saying flawless victory? Like, that's a bit on the nose for me. That's a bit much, like when Kano pulls Reptile's heart out, which is great that they included his finishing move from the first game. But do we need him going, Kano wins? Like, that's probably too much.
Right. Exactly.
Especially when you're trying to present yourself somewhat seriously.
That's where its identity crisis comes in.
Exactly. And the whole just kind of, you got to bring out your arcana. Like I referenced the Deadpool film earlier, but it just immediately went, this is ripped off from Deadpool. They're just going to put you through hell. They're going to kind of torture you. They're going to beat you up. They're going to put you through pain until you develop your mutant ability. Like that's really what it felt like to me. And I'm like, this is dumb. And then somehow Jax's, ability is he gets vibranium arms instead of his baby arms. Like
so what? If he didn't, like if he had normal arms, what would it be? Just really big normal arms? Like, all like,
yeah.
I just, I didn't get that. And then again, just part of some of that CGI when he gets those arms, it does not look good at all. Like it is not visually appealing. which again
And Cole's abilities, he gets a fancy gold Under Armour rash guard. Like,
right,
that's what he gets? Like, really?
right, with the arm spears, like,
Yeah,
oh,
he gets the tonfas. Okay, I guess that part's maybe a little cool, but I don't know. It kind of feels like they sat around the writers' room and just threw darts at a wall, and whatever it landed on, like, that's good enough.
right. Let's backtrack here for 1 second, because the other thing too, again, I liked her. I thought she was good. I don't like the fact that she was treated as an afterthought and was Sonya like, oh, if you defeat somebody, you can take their like. I don't know. Maybe I was missing the point of what that was supposed to mean, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that Sonya had to beat somebody, and before that, she was looked on, like she was looked down on. Like they even say that when he's like, "Nope, you can't train here, boys only." He doesn't say that exact line, but
well, it's implied almost, right?
right, yeah, exactly.
I think it sort of diminished how cool of a character she was, because she actually has some pretty badass fights at different points of this.
Right,
There's the one
exactly.
where they're walking through the desert, and she and Kano kind of get into it real quick. It's a quick moment, but it's actually really good, and I think it shows her. It shows her as a very tough, formidable warrior. I mean,
Right,
she really is
right.
throughout this. Like, she represents herself very well. And I'll tell you the one thing that I absolutely love that they didn't do is when she does win a fight that she's probably outmatched in. It's not because she does this stupid flying scissor grab the shoulder thing and flip you on your head. That's literally every single fight Black Widow has ever been in, she does. Like, that's
Mhm.
kind of the go-to in Hollywood when you need a woman to take out a bigger, strong man. You kind of have her do the flying scissor thing where she grabs the shoulders and whips him around, and that's how she takes him out. Like, they didn't do that, and I was thrilled about that. Like, they actually made her a formidable opponent. And would it have been better if she already had the marking before we meet her? I kind of think it would have been. I know what they were trying to do by having her earn it throughout the film by taking out somebody who had it. I just didn't like how she was dismissed though by the guys that are supposed to be our heroes.
Right. And we talked about in the beginning, well, I mentioned it, that to me, this movie has what I call the Amazing Spider-Man 2 syndrome. And what I mean by
Yep.
that is Amazing Spider-Man 2 feels like a trailer for the Sinister Six. And this movie feels like, when you like step back, a trailer for Mortal Kombat 2. And the director has said that his plan is, first movie is pre-tournament, second movie is the tournament, third movie is post-tournament. And I'm kind of confused by that because, okay, so if the second movie is going to be the tournament, Shang Tsung obviously doesn't care. So why all of a sudden now would he sit there and be like, okay, I tried to take people there and kill Earth Warriors, and that didn't work, but now all of a sudden I beat him in a tournament? Like, why wouldn't he just be shady again and come back with like an army and just invade, or whatever the case may be? And again, maybe I'm missing something, but the way that this movie played out, I don't understand why he would be okay with a tournament in the second movie and being like, oh, okay, well, now I'll follow the rules.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And that's kind of what I mean by when I say this movie should have just leaned into the goofiness, because when you start trying to ask questions, when you start trying to make sense of the plot or why anybody's doing anything, you don't get a lot of good answers, which is why you should basically leave your plot very vague. It's a tournament. They're going to fight. Some people are going to die. Some people are going to get, bit in half by a giant, animal of some kind. Someone's going to get burned. Someone's going to get stabbed. We're going to have body parts just laying a strew by the end of this film. Don't think about it too much. Just come for the fights. Like, that's why they should have just stuck with that. And it's, there's a couple different ways you can approach the idea of planning out future films before you actually focus on making a good film, which this is not a good film. You can look at something as recently, and this has been in the news a lot lately, where J.J. Abrams has come out and said, yeah, we didn't really plan out Star Wars. We probably should have.
Right.
And we very recently discussed the Star Wars saga, which, listeners, if you've not, go check it out. 2 episodes. There's 3 of us really breaking it down, having a great time. It's some of the most fun I've ever had. He certainly, and you can tell, we spent a lot of time talking about how there is such a noticeable difference between the first and the second film, and the second film to the third film, and the third film of the sequel trilogy feels like a true sequel to the first film. So, and you can see where something like DC, also on the HBO Max, they didn't really have a great plan for how they were going to do things. It's very hit or miss. So you can certainly find examples where not having a real strategy before moving on to multiple films in your franchise is definitely a detriment, especially when you look at the very in-depth plans that the MCU has had and the wild success that they've had. I mean, it's, that's one of the most dominant forms of popular culture right now is anything related to Marvel. So I think you kind of have to have a balance. You have to make plans, but if you're going to make plans, one of the things you should plan to do is make one good movie that people actually like and would be excited about a continuation of, which I don't know you can say really happened here. I think if the studio wants to greenlight a second film, I think they'll get it. I think that Mortal Kombat as a property is valuable enough where people are going to line up to see it, especially if you can get some names attached to it that people are going to be interested in. I don't really know that you go through the list of actors in this film and recognize them from much, if anything. I can't tell you that I can remember seeing any of these actors in anything I've seen before. If you get Johnny Cage and you get
the guy who plays Shang Tsung is the mob boss in The Dark Knight who takes the money.
Okay. Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I definitely didn't recognize him. And actually, he's quite good. I actually kind of liked him. I think he balanced it perfectly between, some of the goofier nature of what he was trying to deliver and the serious tone the film was trying to take. Yeah, if you get your casting right for your next film, if you bring some of those characters in that we didn't see, that are part of the lore of Mortal Kombat and some of the fan favorites that weren't included in this, and you get the casting right and you get people excited, I think you're going to get a second film for sure. And this might be one of those ones where they film 2 and 3 simultaneously and release them, a year apart. I could see that definitely happening here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion that we will at least get number 2 because this movie actually was successful. It was a hit on HBO Max. It has gotten its budget back from the theaters. So I don't, and again, generally speaking, it doesn't have the highest reviews, but it is certainly nowhere close to like, oh, geez, so many people didn't like this movie that we could never warrant getting a sequel because nobody would go see it. So I think that there's probably no doubt that we would get a sequel to this movie. But to me, the way that this movie panned out, and we just kind of touched on this a minute ago, is the first movie should have been the tournament, and the second movie should have been almost following exactly what. Excuse me, I'm fighting this. I don't think the words are allowed to come out of my mouth, but like what Mortal Kombat Annihilation was, where it should be exactly. I know, where it should be that okay, we lost. And now I'm just going to invade. Obviously, Annihilation is Jeez, I will actually watch that movie because it's like Batman and Robin to me. I want to just one day be able to go, please just tell me, let's sit down with whatever your drink of choice is. Please tell me what you were doing. Please watch this with me right now, and you tell me your honest, unfiltered thoughts about what was going on. Were you having a rough time in life? Because what was this?
Well, but if you think back
me,
to the illustrious history of trying to adapt, if you think about the illustrious history of trying to adapt video games to movies, it's not good. Yeah. Like it's not good at all. Like you have Super Mario Brothers, Sonic the Hedgehog, which you recently reviewed, Street Fighter, which is one of the worst movies ever conceived of. I mean, to think about the insane amounts of cocaine that had to have been consumed on set for them to continue on. You have things like Tomb Raider, which wasn't terrible.
Well, Rob, that's a real thing. Jean-Claude Van Damme was spending like $10,000 in cocaine while he was doing that movie.
Oh yeah. And to think that was Raul Julia's last movie ever is quite awful. But Resident Evil, not a great film franchise overall.
It's the most successful one of all time,
which is weird to think. You have things like Double Dragon, Silent Hill is in there, and Max Payne, not a good movie. Like as I'm trying to think if there's Dead or Alive was a film.
House of the Dead, Prince of Persia,
also terrible.
Assassin's Creed.
Yes, I guess maybe Assassin's Creed is among the best you can think of. Like, man, it's really like Hitman was a movie. Like there's
twice.
You're really not coming up. Yeah. And you're really not coming up with a lot of adaptions of video games that have turned into anything like that you're happy about. It kind of makes me worried a little bit for Uncharted. Like, oh boy, I want that to be good. Like, I really want that to be good. I'm kind of worried now that I just went through this list that I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's they certainly don't have the best track record, but again, that's Rob. I said it to you, and I'll state it here while we're talking about the movie for the listeners. This movie made me go back and watch the 1995 Mortal Kombat, and for me, that movie is, and again, it's not a good movie. But for what it does and for what it represents itself as, I think that is the best representation of a comic or a video game property that works, because I can watch that from start to finish and I really don't have any complaints about that movie. I just watch it, I have a good time, and I go about my business. With this, I think it's because you can see so much potential in this movie. And then it turns out to be, anybody who watches football, it turns out to be Ryan Leaf at number 2. Like, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. I think there's definitely some good ideas. There were some good things that they tried to do. It makes you wonder how much studio interference there really was outside of, shoehorning in a character that's not based on anything that we've seen before. Where there's certain things they said, okay, the script must contain this. Like, when Scorpion says, "Get over here," dude speaks no English. He speaks Japanese the entire film. Doesn't speak any Chinese. He even says, "I don't understand your words." And he says them in Japanese. And somehow he says, "Get over here," in perfect English. That's one of those moments that I would love to hear from somebody who did see this in a theater, because I would want to know what was the reaction. Because I think that line, the way it was presented, the way it was delivered, the way it was set up, was entirely designed to make a packed theater respond.
Right.
Because when you're sitting on your couch, it's just lame. Like, it's just lame. A packed theater, you're high-fiving the guy next to you that you've never met and be like, he said the line, he did the thing, and you're losing your mind.
Especially too because of the fact that right there is actually, again, like my adrenaline kind of got pumping because of the fact the remix that they do of the Mortal Kombat theme when Scorpion shows up as Scorpion at the end. I started to go, okay, well, all right, we're going to get, I don't know, 10 minutes and okay, like, sure, this is what I've been waiting for. And you get the little beat, and then it's just kind of like, okay, that was really cool, but it's, again, I was talking about this the other day with two of my friends. It's the stick of gum that used to be in the baseball cards that you'd buy where you'd chew it twice and all the flavor was gone. Like, like, like he shows up, he throws a spear through his arm, and then again, though, you can't even focus on Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Oh geez, we got to watch Cole Young break his family out of ice. Like, ooh, how exciting!
Which,
it was.
By the way, every cell in their body would have been frozen. They would have been dead. Like, if you're frozen in ice like that, you're not coming back. You're dead. Like, let's just get that out of the way.
Well, he had his magical, Power Rangers gold shield on.
Yeah. The final fight, I think, is probably the best fight of the whole film. I actually think it's the best cinematography of any of the fights of the film. There's little moments. There's, one of the things I always look for in fight scenes, especially hand-to-hand combat scenes or scenes that don't involve firearms, I guess. I'm looking for creativity. Show me something I've never seen before. And that's why I really enjoy a lot of what Marvel gives us consistently. It's, they really do a great job. I point out Ant-Man a lot, when you see the fight scenes and him using the growing and shrinking mechanic. I mean, it's so well done, so creative. And I love what they do with it. It's really well done. And I think they do the same thing with Spider-Man. I think it's really, really well done there. So you've got a character who can freeze things. You've got another guy who's got the spear. Show me something I haven't seen. And we kind of get that where there's the bit of blood that goes spraying everywhere and Sub-Zero freezes it and turns that into a knife and stabs him with his own blood. That's kind of interesting. And we haven't really seen that before. Do I rank that, even though I say this is my favorite fight of the film, do I rank that like in my top 20 film fights that I've ever seen? Nope. Like, I don't know what I would call my top 20, but I can tell you this one ain't in it.
I think I'll reference it again. I think Johnny Cage versus Scorpion from Mortal Kombat 1995, I think it beats this fight.
Yep. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and I'm just going to say, yep.
Yeah, like, again, it's the best fight out of the bunch, but again, when it's the best fight out of the worst, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's great. And that's, again, like we said, that's the problem, because this certainly, there are breadcrumbs everywhere that this could have been great, but like you said, it suffers from an identity crisis. It is too reliant to trying to set up a universe that they couldn't say, well, again, let's just make the best possible film that we can. And then because we're going to do that, we'll be lucky to get a sequel because the fans will want it. Not, well, if you want to know what's going to happen, you're going to have to give us a sequel. That's what I can't stand. A sequel should be because the fans want it. And I just recently saw that with A Quiet Place 2, where I went and saw that in the theater, and I mentioned it. God, it was great to be back in the theater. But A Quiet Place 2 is a sequel because fans wanted it, and John Krasinski came back because he didn't want the studio creating something that he wasn't going to be behind. Because he had no intention for doing a sequel, the fans wanted it, and he said, well, I do have ideas, but I didn't want to get, I didn't want to get caught on that train. But that's a movie where he set out to make the best film he could. And because he made such a great film, fans said, well, you got to tell us more about this universe. Like, what happened? How did these creatures come to Earth? How did, what transpired here? And I will be doing a review on that movie. Just a quick little sidebar. Spoiler alert, it is fantastic. Absolutely amazing movie. But Rob, that's my biggest problem, like I said, with Mortal Kombat is it's a movie that says if you want to know what's going on, you have to have a sequel. Not, well, the fans would want one. It's, well, you have to get one.
I 100% agree. And I kind of have some thoughts. So Shang Tsung doesn't really, towards the end of this, doesn't really seem that bothered at how many of his henchmen got taken out.
Nope.
Doesn't seem to bother him. And just kind of playing with the idea, like one of the biggest aspects of Shang Tsung from the games that we do not see explored, referenced, we don't see it even hinted at, not so much as the speck of a breadcrumb, is his ability to morph into any of the other characters and change into, he's a shapeshifter.
Right.
I wonder if we will see that in the second film and he will assume, the persona of some of these characters that we saw, or perhaps he reincarnates their souls or something like that. I think that it'd be a shame if we don't get more Kano in the second film. I'm going to be totally bummed out about that. And it would feel weird to have a series of Mortal Kombat films that's not that doesn't have the tension and the conflict between Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero certainly plays a huge role in the second, third games and so on and so forth. In the lore, he's a major character. Leaving the Lin Kuei and doing some of the other thing. He fights without the mask, and then at some point they turn him into a robot too, and it's not the original Sub-Zero. It is this one. It's like they do a lot with him. It would be weird if he's not around, if they decide to continue on with this world.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot that happens to him. But, ultimately, again, just a movie that the breadcrumbs are there. It's just unfortunate that you can't find all of them to make this a good movie. But, Rob, I'd like to ask a few questions here and go through. Better Sonya Blade, 1995 or the new one?
Ooh. I'm probably going to say the new one just because I really did like what she did with the character and was really a bright spot for me. But I'd have to rewatch the 95 one again before I would feel really confident in that. But I think you're going to go 95, aren't you?
Actually, no. I would go. I thought Sonya in the 95 one was really good. I do really like this version of Sonya. So I would nod to this one. One that is 100% in favor of the original movie, Liu Kang. I think the guy that plays Liu Kang in this movie, again, nothing against him. I just don't buy it. And that's because, the original is, to me, he was absolutely spot on perfect. Is Liu Kang.
A lot of bad dialogue for him in this one. I haven't seen this actor in anything else where I can really gauge whether or not he's serviceable, he's good, he's not good. But most of the dialogue he was given was crap and just didn't make a lot of sense. So 95 for me on Liu Kang.
Better Shang Tsung.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to push. I might favor 95 just because we get more of him. We don't really get a lot of Shang Tsung in this one. Nowhere near enough for what I think I'd like.
Right.
And I think the 95 version really plays up the silliness of it and revels in it and goes with it.
Yeah. Better Raiden.
Oh, 95. Hands down.
Yes, 95 for me, hands down as well. I won't count Jax because he was not in until the second movie, and we just can't count anything in terms of acting in the second movie. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that I think we're both in agreement. Better Goro.
uh, I mean, that's having to say that there was a good one. It looked better in the '95 version, and he didn't
Yeah,
even look good then.
right. In terms of look, I still think he is better. Um, there's more backstory to them, so this might be an obvious answer, but better Scorpion and Sub Zero.
Um, '95, yeah. You know, I don't think we got it. I think there was some compelling things they were trying to do with those two in this. The 2021 version focuses, like we've said, entirely too much on Cole Young. We don't get enough of the characters that we, the fans, have grown up loving and adoring and wanting to see more of. And '95 gave us that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the outfits for 2001 for Scorpion and Sub Zero are better. I like Scorpion and Sub Zero better in 1995, though. Again, Rob,
Yeah.
I'd be very interested if and when you go back and watch the original Mortal Kombat, what your feelings are seeing it now. Because again, I said this movie makes me appreciate that movie a lot more, and I was so surprised when I went back and watched it how much enjoyment I actually get out of that movie, where again, I don't get as much enjoyment out of this movie as I do that version of Mortal Kombat.
Fairly certain it's still on HBO Max right now.
Yeah. There's a lot of Mortal Kombat stuff on HBO Max, including the Mortal Kombat television show, which is painfully, hilariously awful. It is just one of the worst things I've ever seen, but for the best, in terms of so bad it is good. Which, Rob, quick little sidebar, you might be surprised to know this. It's called Mortal Kombat Conquest, but can you take one wild guess? She's in Ghost Rider, who makes an appearance in an entire episode in that show.
Ooh, Jessica Alba?
No, Eva Mendes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Oh,
remember
boy.
watching this show like way back when it first came out, which it actually uses stock footage of Mortal Kombat Annihilation in the show, which is funny. It's hysterical. But I remember watching it way back in the day and then rewatching it. And I was like, oh, I got to go back through and just watch this. And I remember seeing her going, wow, this was before she was like well known, but it was so funny seeing like anybody that I recognized like being a part of this show. Like, why would you do this? Like, you can't have that same agent still. There's no way. Like, but like that's somebody who doesn't have your best interest at heart. So
no,
but
they clearly are not looking at the script.
right, exactly. So Rob, where does this movie stand for you, man?
So I watched it originally when it came out on HBO Max, and I didn't love it on my first watch through. I still feel very much the same after having a chance to rewatch it recently. I liked it a little better on my second watch through, and I'll tell you why. The entire time you're kind of waiting for the tournament. Like that's what you think it's building towards. And your climax is Scorpion versus Sub-Zero in the frozen, MMA gym. Like that's your climax. And you're thinking it's going to be a face-off between, maybe Raiden and Shang Tsung or somebody in Shang Tsung. Like you're thinking that's your climax. You're thinking that it's going to eventually give you a tournament. and it doesn't, and it's all of the other things that lead up to it. So on a second watch through, when you already know what to expect, it's better on the second watch through for me. I think on my first watch, it was a 2.5, 2 maybe. Second time through, I'm giving it a 3, and I think I'm being maybe a little generous. This is I don't know if I've gone to 3/4 stars. It might actually be a 2 3/4. But I'm feeling a little bit generous. I'm going to call it a 3 reels.
Yeah. The first time I watched it, like I said, I was with a group, so it wasn't. It was more about the experience of being with a bunch of friends and watching this. So I was a little bit distracted from it. The second time I watched it, again, it wasn't any better for me than the first time, just because I literally was just watching it by myself and I didn't have that interaction. I would say, though, that Rob, I'd agree with you. I'm going to give this 3 reels. I did give it 3 stars on my Letterboxd account, where you just can rate and review movies. But that's probably being a little generous. It's not good. I certainly still would check out a sequel. Like, look, there's some potential there. Could they course correct and make a good second movie? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's entirely impossible, but they definitely would have a lot of work to do. And they'd really, in the second one, for me, Rob, like you said, they would have to decide what type of movie it is.
If you take Kano out of this movie, or you write him differently, this movie is 1.5 stars, I think. When you get to the second one, rectifying its identity crisis, what are you really trying to do? How many characters are you trying to push into this film? At times, this feels like there's too many characters, because Kung Lao, does he have any, like, I don't even know if we've said his name really. Maybe once when we're talking about his fatality, but outside of his fatality, when he cuts her in half with his hat, like, he has no character development at all. Liu Kang is a piece of paper, like, that's, he's got no dimension, no depth. Do we really know a lot about Raiden? No. I mean, there's like nothing of most of these characters. The most interesting and compelling are Sonya and Kano. Outside of that, I don't really find that many other characters in this whole film to be of any interest or compelling, even a little bit.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, 2 mainstays of Mortal Kombat and people who have this deep history in Mortal Kombat, Kung Lao and Liu Kang, are afterthoughts, especially, I mean, Kung Lao, but especially Liu Kang. Like you said, he's paper. He's like a stand-in in this movie, and he's still a relevant main character even to this day in Mortal Kombat 11. And he has a huge part in the DLCs for that game. But in this, he's regulated to just being like, oh, you know the name, so he's in the movie, which, again, I don't understand the studio's just bullheadedness of, no, we want this original character in the game. I mean, or in the movie, because that's the other thing too. Like, what do you, like, I don't know. Are you going to put Cole Young as a DLC character in Mortal Kombat? Like, nobody's paying for that. Like, nobody cares. Nobody wants to see that guy. So the fact that you had to take just unrelatable character to me and shoehorn him into this movie when you had enough people to pick from. I mean, Rob, you said Ultimate MK3. I mean, that had what, 64 characters in it?
Oh God, I don't even remember. I don't think it was that many, but there was quite a few. I mean, it was because when you went from 2 to 3, not everybody made the jump from 2 to 3, but the Ultimate Edition of 3, everybody was there. Baraka was kind of my guy for MK2. Loved using that character. And then when they moved to 3, he wasn't included, but the Ultimate Edition he was. Thinking about a second film, if they greenlight it, and let's assume they will, I would say he's probably the character I'm most interested to see if they can find a really interesting way to bring him in that we didn't see. I'd like to see him, and I'd like to see Sector and Cyrax. I'd like to see if they decide to do them as their ninja form or their cyborg form, and what they do with it, because I think the energy net could be pretty sweet. I think the rocket launchers coming out of the chest, that could be pretty sweet if they know how to use it. Because I don't think, like, you can't present that seriously. Like, you just can't. What about you, Matt? Is there characters that you're thinking from the Mortal Kombat rosters you'd love to see in a subsequent film?
I would really like to see Smoke. I would love to see. I mean, really, I would have loved to see more Cabal. I thought he was awesome.
Yeah.
I would, depending on which version, because the newer games, I would love to see Rain. He has been awesome. Again, if you're going to go campy, and again, it's later games, but bring in Ermac, because if you've played any of these games with these characters, man, there's just so many things that you could do if you just want to be all out. Look, this is a Mortal Kombat movie, and this is about people just kicking the crap out of each other with really cool fights and really cool fatalities. Some of those guys have some really, really interesting moves and things that, if done right on screen, again, I don't even think you need a relative story. You are just going to be captivated by what you're seeing on the screen. So I think there's a ton of potential to still, like I said, do a second movie and be good. You just have to decide which way that you're going and commit to it. And if it doesn't work, then I guess it didn't work, but you can't try and take a left and a right at the same time.
100% agree.
So that's my thoughts on that. Rob, anything that you want to close out with here before we say goodbye to the listeners and kind of talk about a couple of things coming up?
Well, we've got Loki coming up for sure, but just, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to more MCU content. But just as a quick thank you to all the listeners, if you're new to the show, thank you so much for listening. There's a very deep, robust, year-long catalog of content to choose from. So definitely go check those out. Hit up Matt on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, Podchaser. You can leave a review, so definitely do that. You can also email the show. Matt, what is the show's email address if listeners would like to contact you?
So that is actually, all this will be in the notes as well, but the email for the show is basically the abbreviation of the show title. So Matt Goes to the Movies. The email will be mgttm at gmail, or sorry, I almost forgot my own email. It's mgttmpodcast at gmail.com. Again, all of this contact information will be inside the show notes, email, Facebook, Instagram. There's TikTok videos that we do for the show. We have some video stuff on YouTube as well. So there's a lot of ways to contact the show. We had some really good interactions with the Star Wars anniversary show that we did, which was a ton of fun talking with listeners and just hearing about experiences with Star Wars. So we always love the interaction. Hit up the show. Loki's coming out soon. We'll look forward to doing that. We are anticipating being able to do that again with Harrison from the Basement Binge. Certainly repeat listeners of this show would know who he is, as we've done WandaVision with him, which was a lot of fun. He's been on the show a couple times in some solo episodes that I've done. So a lot of stuff coming up. I also do have 2 shows that I'm going to be doing before Loki. One on A Quiet Place 2 and the other one on Spiral from the Book of Saw. Both movies that I went to go see in the theater now that they're open. Really looking forward to talking about just being back in the theater and what I thought of those 2 movies. So, Rob, thank you again. Thank you to the listeners.
Yep.
Again, if you're a first-time listener, thank you. If you're a repeat listener, thank you as well. We always love doing this, and we'll look forward to seeing you real soon on Matt Goes to the Movies.